Shall we begin?
I knew we was going to beat them clowns.
Fire away.
9 to noon.
You homer! They can smell it. Stop him! Stop him! Stop him!
It's on now.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
You know, the NBA is really tough, and these guys are really good, and Dallas has two really good closers. So, you know, they're able to make tough shots down the stretch, and they've been able to win games in these series by doing that, you know, regardless of how they played during the game. So we just got to try to contain those two. I think we did a good job tonight, try to contain Jones Jr., P.J. Washington. They're playing really well for them, and, you know, I think we'll be in good shape.
And indeed, our Minnesota Timberwolves, well, they're in shape. Good shape is one thing, in shape is another. And we welcome you to the Staying Alive edition of 9 to noon on a beautiful Wednesday. And I'm Paul Allen, Nordo produces. And we're happy to be joined by Chris Finch, coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Prize Picks, Daily Fantasy Made Easy, provides Chris, along with Second Harvest Heartland and 2harvest.org. Chris is a board member for Second Harvest Heartland. Check out the website if you get the opportunity, 2harvest.org. Well, Coach, welcome home, and you guys are staying alive. How you feeling right now?
I feel good, man. I'm happy to get out of here with a win last night, of course. Played really well. Felt we can even play better, which is an exciting thing. But nothing more exciting than be able to come home for a big Game 5 in front of our home fans.
With the post game press conference, Chris, were you a little edgy? Were you exhausted? I mean, it seemed like you were a little edgy in that press conference.
Yeah, a little edgy. You know, I thought our guys fought through a lot of adversity last night, you know, I just felt that we weren't getting the respect that we deserve in this series, from a variety of you know, places, but mainly on the floor. And you know, my intention coming into the game last night was to, as I said, inject the emotion into the game and make sure that people out there recognize that we were here to fight.
And you said that in the post game press conference, and just double down on it, that your job was to inject emotion into the game last night. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I knew our players would come out. We'd play hard, and give it our all. But I also hadn't felt that we'd been getting the respect from the officials that we deserve. You know, as a team that's accomplished and played the way we had, and I wanted to make sure that I was out there going to fight the fight for our guys who were fighting the good fight.
So with the tee, when Cap picked up number 5 right in front of your bench, was that more emotion injecting, or do you think the elbow to PJ shouldn't have been called?
No, I mean that was Scott Foster. You know, had warned me earlier in the game. I mean, that call, I haven't really looked at it again, so I don't know. I do know it looked a lot like the Doncic foul on the 6th foul for Cat. So I'm not sure how one goes one way and the other goes the other, but you know, I just waved off Scott Foster, which is apparently a taboo thing, and he hit me with a technical. So
you got teed for the wave off?
Yeah, the wave off.
All righty now. Did you do any damage to the knee bouncing around on the sideline? I was I was concerned.
No. Yeah, I appreciate the concern. No, I mean, listen, it's been the knee's good. The pain is way down. It's more just general discomfort. As you know, Mike has done an incredible job, as the whole staff has done. But as I'm allowed to do and able to do more and more, I want to be, up front, engaged, get back to some of the old, routine. And I'm still not able to be out in front coaching just, for safety reasons. I just couldn't get out of the way of something if it happened in front of me again. But, in huddles and timeouts, that kind of stuff, I can do more and more, and just being able to be up and be present and, have interesting conversations with officials. That's like all things I think I can do to help impact the game.
They're not interesting conversations with officials. They're injecting emotion. That's you're the emotion injecting coordinator. That's not bad to have on the resume next to head coach. But seriously, you got Carl going with those threes last night. How massive was that? And by the way, congratulations on that victory.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it was huge. Listen, Carl got himself going. He really did. He played within the game. Everything that he did came within the flow of the game. Coming into a game like that, and particularly, having not played that well in the series, a lot of players would be super antsy, try to chase the game and kind of maybe try to do too much. He didn't. He stayed within the flow. I thought he turned down a few shots maybe in the first half, but that's okay. He drove, he made some good plays. And then, just stayed ready. And then we started kind of featuring him a little bit more on some things in the third quarter that got him going a bit. And then Ant started finding him, and Kyle was screaming for him and everybody. And so it was, it was really Cat. It was Cat's mindset. It was his composure. It was his willingness to let the game come to him. And then when it did, he took full control.
Chris, in Game 4, when Cat couldn't hit anything, and you kept him in and let him try to shoot through it, which I thought was really cool. Is it just a matter of confidence and time before the gifted shoot their ways out of slumps?
100%. It's too good of a player to not play really, really well. And he's played really well for us in the previous two series, been a huge part of the reasons that we've won those, both offensively and defensively. And what I would say is this, we've always felt this is going to be a long series. Doesn't matter what, down 0-3, down 1-3, whatever it is. And, you have to stay confident in your guys. And we finished Game 2 with Nas because he was on a heater. And that was just the right thing to do. That's what the game told us to do. In Game 3, Nas played well, but we had to get Cat into the series somehow. And, we had to stay confident. He had to know that we still believed in him. And he's finished 95% of the games that we've played. So it's literally a vote of confidence more than it was anything. And in some small way, maybe that vote of confidence paid off to last night's result.
And with Karl Anthony Towns and the fouls, is the preach to him just to do his very best to avoid the ticky-tack stuff for which he always gets called? I mean, that foul trouble seemed to work on your last nerve last night.
Yeah, I think. Listen, he gets a lot of offensive fouls, and that's what I think compounds the foul trouble sometimes with him. The offensive fouls, other than his fifth foul, which maybe, he kind of stepped outside of his cylinder a little bit. He got 2 charges. I didn't think one was a charge. One might have been a charge. But the one that happened early in the game, I was like, I'm not going to challenge that because I didn't think I'm going to win it. That's the other thing about all these challenges. Like, they might, the referee's willingness to overturn their own calls is something that you have to factor in. Yeah. Like, okay, who made the call? How often does that guy overturn his own calls when he goes to the monitor? These are things,
right?
We know Foster is one that overturns his own calls at the lowest rate in the league. But I still challenged one of his calls when Anthony had a steal because I thought, it was Anthony's. It would have been our ball and it was Anthony's fourth, so it was a high leverage situation. I thought we could win, and I thought we should have won. But having said that, I thought Cat's offensive fouls were, the good kind, if you will. They weren't like hooks and flails and, that kind of stuff. And yeah, he's going to have some ticky-tack defensive ones from time to time, but he did a really good job. I think the most important thing with his foul troubles, he played through it. He was able to play through it. And we took him out. We almost took him out, rather. But then he got an and one, I think, or got fouled, and we left him in, and then he got on a little roll after that.
Chris Finch, coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, nice enough to join 9 to noon. The morning after an elimination-staving victory by the Timberwolves, still trailing Dallas 3-1 in the Western Conference Finals, and Game 5 is tomorrow night at Target Center and on KFAN. Coach, Dallas... And like Phoenix, Dallas bites a lot on those Edwards drives and kicks to the corner for the threes. What leads to calling that play? And do you want to call it all the time? It was terrific last night.
Well, there's a lot of different ways that we try to get Anthony to the heart of the defense, and then we rely on Anthony to make the right play. And I thought down the stretch he did an outstanding job, and most of the second half, to be fair. He came into the game with an aggressive mindset. He was not going to go out without giving it his all, being aggressive. With him, it often means getting up as many shots as he possibly can. And he set the tone for us, and we were up big on to start, or up 10 to start as a result of that.
Yeah.
Then as the half wore on, first half wore on, they just started sending more and more bodies, and we looked at some things at halftime where we felt we could counter that, and he did a really good job of adjusting, and then created a lot of buckets for his teammates in the second half.
Is part of being a head coach, or a successful head coach, I mean, you got a team in the Western Conference Finals, man, yet not dwelling. And what I'm getting at is, like, in Game 2, the Mavs were just begging to be blown out. I mean, you guys had them 13, 15, 18, 13 for the longest time. They got blown out in that Clippers series. They got blown out once in the OKC series, almost twice. And so you can't dwell on that, right? But they were begging to be blown out in Game 2, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we had them. I think Game 2 is the pivot game, for sure. Whether it be the blowing the big lead or getting beat at the buzzer with the Doncic shot. But you can't dwell on it. Every game has its own personality. What happened yesterday is unrelated to what will happen tomorrow. And that cuts both ways. We're still backs against the wall. Got to come out fighting. We play with the same desperation and intention that we played with last night. But yeah, you got to have the ability to move on. It's a really, really great team that we're playing. They're not the fifth best team in the Western Conference. I mean, since the trade deadline, they've been top 4 in offense and defense with the best points differential amongst the starting 5. I mean, they've done a really, really great job of remaking their team mid-season. Yeah, and they're easily a top 3 team in the West if you think about it. So, and they have 2 great players that are playing at a high level and able to close games with either of them. So, losses hurt. They certainly do. It's been an unbelievable series if you're just a fan of basketball, NBA basketball. When you're in it, obviously, you come up short. You got to keep going back and figuring it out. But yeah, you got to move on from what just happened and try to come up with a new game plan. But you can't dwell on the results of it all.
Kyle Anderson, man, is so smart. I mean, he got, one of those threes that we're talking about, Edwards drives, kicks to the corner. Alexander Walker hit a big one, but I mean, you guys missed a fair amount of them too. I mean, if you're hitting those wide open threes on that Edwards kick, holy cow. But anyway, Kyle got Towns lined up on one of those threes right in front of your bench and set that sweet little pick. And like when he put him into the right spot, and Anthony was patient enough knowing Carl needed to be there, so he waited for slow-mo, then he penetrated, you got that little pick. What led you to believe into the series Kyle Anderson had such a key role?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is his versatility. We know with the way that they play, we would need his defensive versatility. He's been a pretty good Luka matchup for us in the 2 years he's been here. Just with the way that they were going to play defense, we felt that he was going to be able to unlock shots for us. Kyle didn't play major minutes in the last series, in the Denver series, because it was different. It was more about how many big bodies can you throw at Jokic.
Yeah.
Now it becomes how many different looks can we give those two guards, and also at the other end, we always know how much more kind of settled and secure we feel with Kyle out there helping to orchestrate offense.
And Luka's immortality. I mean, there ain't no doubt about it. But so this may seem preposterous, but Kyle bugs him. Haven't you noticed that there are times Kyle bugs Luka Doncic?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's got a big body. I mean, Luka's an incredible player, one of the best in the world right now. But what you don't realize about him is big. He's big, he's strong, he's got a thick body, he hits you first. You got to be able to absorb that hit, and when, they especially with the way they allow him to, push off to create separation, you got to be able to withstand that and still have the length, and the footwork to contest and compete. So he does a good job with that and gives us some switchability too, which is always good when you have such a high IQ pick and roll player like Luka.
Chris, when you say they allow him to push off, do you guys have like pregame meetings with the refs where, I'm just used to this from the NFL. It happens every single game where you meet and you let them know either you got something tricky coming, so don't freak out when you see this, or hey, can you guys do a better, or can you guys monitor this and maybe the push offs? Do you have those meetings?
No, not pregame. The pregame meetings are more of formality with the captains and the officials. I don't think there's anything of substance discussed there.
Got it.
Certainly nothing amongst the coaches, whatever. Any kind of points of emphasis that we want to draw, we have to do through official channels post game. But you see it a lot. You see, the defense has become more prevalent in the league, coming, certainly in the second half of this season, which is great to see. Adds to the overall kind of flavor of the product. But I still think the offensive players are given too much advantage on just simple push-offs to create space. And then when the defender tries to close that gap and the offensive player steps back into it, they call a foul. Seems a little unfair to me. If someone's going to push me off and I try to come back and retake my space and they launch themselves at me, I've been put at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I think it's something that the league needs to continue to look at to try to mitigate.
What did you think of Anthony's overall game?
I thought it was outstanding. It really was. I thought, he was going to be aggressive, wanted the ball in his hands down the stretch. I thought for the most part he made good decisions. Even the shots that he got there under control, and they were clean. He didn't try to do too much. He just got to his spot, rose up, made the shot. Even the step through bank shot was something that, he didn't overcomplicate. Found Cat at the right times, a couple times for big threes. And defensively, he was really good on Luka, kind of just navigating a lot of their picks.
A couple more here with Chris Finch, coach of the Timberwolves. Thanks for the time too, Chris. Kyrie,
anytime.
Kyrie was 14-0 all time in closeout games. Now he's 14-1. Anything descript leading to his off night?
No, listen. He's a phenomenal player playing at an incredible level right now. To me, he's some of the best basketball I've ever seen him play. He's got a great chemistry with his team. He and Luka have figured it out. He's got the ability to get anywhere on the floor, the best ball handler in the league, and one of the best finishers in the league, too. So he's got a complete package, and he's guarding at a high level. There's going to be nights where the shots just don't go in. Those guys have been making shots at such an incredible rate, and a lot of them are tough, contested shots. And so some nights they're just not going to go in. We've seen that with Cat. It's not like Cat hadn't had good looks. It just hadn't gone in the first couple games of the series. So, we gotta continue to fight them and, show them the crowd and try to make it as hard as possible. But, I don't think there was like a script that we could, that we had any kind of secret to figure it out.
What did you guys change at halftime? You said after the game the adjustments played into the win.
I think it was more just offensively. We're just figuring out where we could kind of take advantage of a few things based on how they were guarding.
And Rudy Gobert, what did you think of Rudy's overall night? Quite physical, wasn't he?
Yeah, I thought it was his best game of the series. I thought activity on defense was where it's always been. He looked more like his normal self. We did a lot better job of protecting him when he was able to be aggressive, which is, one of the things we hadn't been able to do. So we've been giving up a lot of lobs in the series. Just needed to free him and his mindset. I thought, he stayed really composed through a lot of wrestling out there and just kept playing. And, we were in foul trouble and we were able to survive that, but I thought it was his best game of the series. So we're going to need more of it.
So you last one, you got the whole thing seemingly wrapped up. You're going to come back home and, of course, Luka hits the late three and gets fouled. I mean, nothing's easy in this series, right?
No, not at all. I mean, it's when you have great players out there, they're capable of doing great things. I thought we left some money on the table with our turnovers and our missed free throws. I thought we could play it even better. We did a much better job of closing that game. I mean, it felt like every other game in the series. We didn't turn it over. We got a good shot every time, and we were able to get stops down the stretch. And that's the combination that you have to do to win those games. They're going to make some great shots. They've proven that all series that they can do it. So you got to be able to, score alongside of them and get enough stops yourself.
Big time, my man. And thanks for everything you do for Second Harvest Heartland, okay?
I appreciate it, PA. Thanks so much, man.
Yep. See you, bud. Good luck tomorrow night.
Thanks, bud.
Chris Finch, coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves, to start 9 to noon after a thrilling victory over the Dallas Mavericks, where our beloved Timberwolves are staying alive.
Oh. You could tell that we had that desperation that makes us special. We talked about it in shoot around, just that desperation, playing with so much energy on defense, making those rotations, and the plays needed to win.
Just desperate. We left it all out there. We got to be able to do it again in about 48 hours. It's exciting. It's good to get on the board. Got to get one to get two.
Got to get one to get two, then you got to get two to get three, and then maybe history can be made. But the saga, the drama, the comeback, the elimination staving continues tomorrow evening at Target Center for the Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that plays in Minneapolis, which is in the state of Minnesota. The fan has learned a place that it's now in vogue to complain that you have to come to. Like Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, where that whole thing, I mean, it's actually starting to work on my last nerve, where I'm like, okay, after the first time, cool. All right, second time, cool. Third time, oh, great, we get to go back to the snow, where it's going to be 78 and sunny tomorrow, where like in Dallas, it's 83 and rainy. It's trite. It's an overplayed, cliched bit that they just keep running into the ground. And
we're still flyover country, though, PA.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, get a new bit. I mean, has Draymond Green usurping spots and/or time to talk on TNT's pre-halftime and post-game show so thrown Barkley and O'Neal off that all they can do is complain about coming back to Minnesota? I mean, it's just trite. I mean, it's Draymond Green. It's so sad. The NBA show, which for basketball or I think it's called Inside the NBA, which for basketball and non-basketball fans has been so well respected and revered over the years for the authentic nature of its commentary, the authentic nature of the relationships. Ernie Johnson, surrogate dad, guides with the surrogate kid, Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny Smith, and Charles Barkley. And correct me if I'm wrong here, because this came up last week. So, like inside the NBA on TNT, that's dead. Like the whole thing moves to ESPN or something like that.
Well, I don't think it's gonna. I don't think they're moving.
Okay.
No, the contract's coming up, so they're gonna have one more season next year. And
somebody said last week, it might have been Jim Pete.
Well, the new TV deal is so ESPN's going to get the games, but the idea is the rights to the show, right?
Yeah.
And then now you got to talk 70-year-old Ernie Johnson to move from Atlanta to Bristol or LA or wherever. And Barkley's come out and interviews himself, and he kind of thinks that the whole thing might be over. Yeah, so it's certainly entering the twilight stages of that group and that program.
Well, it's
which has been awesome.
If it's going out in any fashion, certainly for this season, it's doing so shabbily and awful since they added Draymond Green. I mean, Shaq, Kenny, and Charles are not nearly as cohesive and authentic with Draymond around. I loved your tweet last night, and it was accurate, too. Is like the post-game player should have been Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, put him up there.
Put Rudy Gobert up there with Draymond Green. You know, after Draymond has said, taken some low-hanging fruit-related things.
So petty, so bitter.
I'm just surprised that a current player with multiple rings would become that petty and that small-minded. It was a brilliant tweet last night. It would have been awesome if they brought Rudy up.
And it stinks, too, because Draymond, when he's actually talking basketball, like, clearly there's a wear-in to the TV vibe.
Super smart
player.
Yeah.
Who happened to play with, those things floating around, best backcourt duo, history of league. Luka and Kyrie have sparked a lot of those talkers.
Right.
He played with Steph and Clay.
Right.
I mean, and when he's not choking people and getting fined and complaining that the NBA doesn't make it feasible for him to have wealth after he's retired, when he's not saying ridiculous things, he's super smart on the game, and he's been a really good player.
And he's good in that commercial with that dog.
Which one?
I can't remember. It's a dog staring at him. He's staring at the dog, and like the dog backs off or something. He's in a commercial, a big commercial during these basketball games, and he's really, really good at it.
But he's replaced all of that with bitterness and pettiness. And with Barkley, I love Chuck so much. And at the first time, he's like, I only brought 2 suits. I don't want to have to go back. Like, that's I enjoyed that.
That was the baseline of what now has become
the 50 ensuing.
Right.
Ugh.
Well, I mean, now granted, we're compensated by FM 100.3 KFAN, your beat bits into the ground leader.
I always love that one.
So it is.
I always love that one.
An interesting twist of fate.
I always love that one.
Or twist of turn of opinion.
I always love that one.
Those at KFAN.
I always love that one.
Are saying to people,
I always love that one.
Get a new bit or stop running the bit into the ground.
Yeah. I always love that one.
But the bit involves a place that we happen to like. Now, what we don't like is foul trouble for our favorite team.
Yeah.
And Chris Finch, who just was on 9 to Noon, we'll play it back a couple of hours from now if you missed it. But, he said something that mildly surprised me when discussing Karl Anthony Towns' foul trouble and just foul trouble overall with the team, Gobert and Anthony Edwards to a certain extent. But he was like, the offensive fouls, there were 2. There were 2 offensive fouls where he's like, those are born of aggression. Those are born of Karl heading to the basket, paraphrasing, looking to make something happen.
Yeah, did Kleba take both those charges? I think it was Kleba.
Yeah, he took one for sure, and he might have messed with their mix a little bit last night too. They couldn't get him all squared away, but that's okay. I'm mildly on the other side of what Chris said, and I'm not second guessing guy. He knows more about it than me, but at least with one of those offensive fouls, they're very easy to see coming, and for the player to stand in front of Karl and take a cinch charge.
Yeah.
Because he buries his head. There's some bowl and china shop terrorism, and he ain't stopping.
Yep.
Now, on one of them, he was pondering passing, but it was too late. So, there were 3 fouls last night by Karl. The third one just really worked on my last nerve, man, where they're either born of he's tired and he's reaching, or he just doesn't get it.
Oh.
And the reason I bring it up like that so tersely, specifically after he had his best game of the series, that's the reason. And you've been hammering on it hard when we've been together talking about it. You ant for dough, but you Karl for show. And if you don't Karl for show, then you don't ant for dough. Because as we established the other day, okay, Indy's done. All right, so Indy, Halliburton, and maybe Siakam, maybe Miles Turner.
Kind of turned into Nembhard, to be honest.
Nembhard with a couple of big performances at the end of the series. Right, channeling his inner younger brother for the Zags. Well, Tatum and Brown are Luka and Kyrie. I mean, if it comes to that quartet right there, that's as good as it gets. Right, unless Karl Anthony Towns becomes that 1A.
Yeah.
And so that's why we hammered on it as much as we do. And I'm the individual during the course of the years who has said Karl Anthony Towns is no better than a 3, maybe a 4 on a championship type team. Well, that's not my belief anymore. And who cares about my stupid ass belief? It's the way Karl has pushed through things and re-identified himself to a certain extent, specifically with the officials, to where after last night's game, Kyrie Irving, paraphrasing, is like, no, we got a ton of respect for Cat. Everybody in this room knows how he can wreck games.
He referred to criticism as unfair. He said,
you.
Despite unfair criticism,
Thank you.
They respect him.
Right. And that's Kyrie Irving, man. Super smart and super well-spoken and super important. And he's like, nah, the criticism's unfair. Perfectly stated. But that last foul worked on your last nerve, didn't it?
No, it did, because I don't know what, and I'm glad you mentioned this with Chris, and Chris said it perfectly. I disagree. When he talked about that offensive foul that Cat had on PJ, he elbowed him in the face.
Yeah.
And they've made that like a topic number one. You put contact on somebody above the neck.
Right.
And they're going to call that foul. Now, they could have even gone farther and hit him with a flagrant. I believe they left it as a common foul.
Yep.
Him fouling out on that Luka. There's a training video. You can find it on Twitter, as a matter of fact.
What kind?
About officiating and offensive fouls as it relates to shooters.
NBA?
And I believe there's even a nickname for it. I think it's the James Harden rule.
Right.
It might be, and I could be wrong on that. The idea is as Luka on that three-point shot fakes going forward and Cat moves back off of the shove, right? So you push that offense, the offensive player pushes the defender back. Then he fakes the shot, allows Cat to get airborne, and then he just launches himself into Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
And one of his feet is back down on the ground. He did not jump into the natural space to eliminate Luka's ability to take the shot. Luka just launches himself into Cat and then hucks up the ball, gets those 3 free throws, and Cat's on the bench for the rest of the night. In the NBA official video of how to call these as offensive fouls.
Wow.
He's the example. Luka Doncic is the example of exactly what he did last night, where he eliminates Cat from his own space with the shove. Then he steps behind the line. Cat jumps to defend, and Luka just throws himself into Karl. It should have been an offensive foul. And I just can't believe in that moment, with the emphasis in those sorts of situations, Luka with the big body uses it well. I mean, I love Luka's game so much, minus the temper tantrums, to be honest with you. I love Luka. I don't know how anybody can, with the shooting ability, the fadeaways, the fallaways. It just thinks that we're the ones that are on the wrong side of it. But that should have been a foul, or should have been a foul on Luka. So things like that, and so you lump that into the moment. I'm looking in on a singular moment over the course of the game. That matters more when Karl is doing the things inside that he was doing last night with the charges.
Yeah.
And so Karl, I do believe that he is a smart player. But I also believe that he's an emotional player. And he needs to be more mature in those moments. The earlier fouls made that final one against Luka hurt more. But Luka's the example.
Yeah, he's the dog.
And he ended up shooting some free throws that mattered, thankfully. And with the dagger, Nas on the inbound, by the way, what a huge bucket that was.
Yeah,
it was finally closing out in the clutch, and that's why we're still alive.
Talkback's free iHeartRadio app. 30 seconds to opine on the Timberwolves' elimination-staving victory last evening. We'll play some back about 30 minutes from now. Around the corner, Mike Florio, PFT. Yeah, you know we. Alrighty, a break from basketball momentarily. Adam Schefter of ESPN is reporting the Minnesota Vikings and guard Dalton Risner have gotten together on a one-year deal. It has been corroborated and or confirmed by the likes of Ben Gessling, Alec Lewis, Kevin Seifert from ESPN. So Dalton Risner, guard who played a majority of the games last year at left guard, reportedly has re-signed with the Minnesota Vikings. And they practice today and Friday, and then they have mandatory minicamp next week. And to chat about that and much more is Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. Mike, sorry for the delay of game here. We with these Timberwolves, man, in the Western Conference Finals. Are you getting bit a tad by these Wolves? They staved elimination last night, and I know you watched the games.
I can understand why you would forget where your bread's buttered on a day like today. The one game that the Wolves are going to win in the conference finals, you need to go all in with it because there won't be another one.
Why would you say something like that? We're coming home tomorrow.
I'm just having fun. My son is all in. You know, we're coming up to a game if they make it to the finals, and it's been excruciating to watch these games because it feels like they could have won every single one of them. It could have been a 4-0 sweep for the Timberwolves, which makes me think there is a real possibility that when things turn around, things may be, looking up. And when you're down 3-0, it's just one win at a time.
Right.
And you get that first one, you get the second. The second one's the key. You get the 3-2, that changes everything. So, we'll see. I'm optimistic, and we're hoping that we can come up there and check out a finals game against the Boston Celtics. So, yeah, he's all in. He's really into it, and I'm into it because he's into it. So It's been fun.
Isn't that awesome? I mean, so Alexander, young Alexander, what is he, about 27, 28 years old, 26?
27, bingo. Wow, impressive.
Right. Well, my son's 23, and isn't it amazing? Like, if your son gets into something and you got an opportunity to spend some time with them and watch it and talk it out together, just how wonderful that is. And what I'm talking about is like my son Derek loves UFC. I mean, up until a year ago, I couldn't care less about UFC. But whenever they have one of those big Saturday night bits and we get together with other family members and his friends, I mean, that's now all of a sudden I like it. Like I'm following it a little bit,
Well, UFC is so much more brutal than football. It's incredible. And if UFC had the same attention and platform that football does, people would want to have it banned. Anytime I hear people complain about the brutality of football, I say, go watch some of the UFC. You got 7 concussions that someone's suffering on the way to the ground when the thing finally falls apart. You've got the referee throwing himself over top of the fighters to try to separate them. I mean, it is a level of brutality that football has never had. And I've actually stopped watching it. I got to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. We used to watch it, and so I just can't do it. But, it's good. It's good to have something you can enjoy with your adult child. Once they go through that phase of thinking Dad isn't cool and I don't want to be around Dad, and then they realize Dad's okay, it's fun to hang out and do stuff.
Hey, were you, or at least reading what you wrote about the Pioneer Press / Charlie Walters nugget the other day about Jefferson and potentially being traded and draft night, Malik Neighbors, the whole thing? Were you surprised it wasn't like a full-blown story? That column aside, indicating, just that the Vikings perhaps considered trading him, which I don't believe they did. But nevertheless, it was just a column aside. That was strange.
Now, let me give you the background on this. I was told during the draft, the first night of the draft, as it was happening, that the Chargers were considering trading out of the 5 spot. Some in the room wanted to trade down. Jim Harbaugh held firm for Joe Alt, the Notre Dame tackle, at number 5. And I was told that the buzz was Vikings up to number 5 to get Malik Neighbors. And I mentioned that on the videos that I was doing one pick at a time. And I was never able to nail it down after the fact, so I never wrote anything about it at PFT. And I kind of regretted even saying anything about it, but I try to be very transparent in the things I'm hearing. I try to couch it all properly, but I never made it a big deal because I wasn't able to nail it down. Chris Sims was hearing the same things from different sources the same night, and we had been talking about it, but we never did anything with it. And then that thing shows up, and yeah, that was one of the things we said when we talked about it on our show yesterday morning. Look, we're not here to make editorial decisions for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, but how in the hell is that an oh, by the way, tucked at the bottom of a column? That's a big deal. And Walters went to a place we didn't go to. Walters said that if the trade up to get Neighbors had happened, the Vikings would have traded Justin Jefferson. I never heard that part of it. And frankly, if you go Neighbors first and then trade Jefferson, you've killed your leverage. You better have a deal in place for Jefferson when you move up for Neighbors, because the moment you get Neighbors and start taking calls and making calls about Jefferson, you're not going to get what you could because they know you're going to try to move him. But I thought maybe they would just try to get through another year. I didn't know what they were going to do. I was stunned when I heard it, and I didn't write anything about it until I saw that item in the Pioneer Press. And I assume they've got editorial standards that required vetting and confirmation and whatnot. And I know that the Vikings will get the word out to the people covering the team that it's not true, because that's the last thing they need right now. And I've seen some of the people who cover the team say that it wasn't going to happen. What else would they say, Paul? What else are they going to say? Yeah, we tried to do it. Now that the ship sailed, it's a must-lie situation. So between Sims hearing it, me hearing it, and Walters writing about it, there's smoke there, baby. Whether or not there's fire, I don't know, because I was never able to confirm it. But, man, there's smoke.
Well, why I never brought it up with you is reading between the lines. It's obviously I don't know who provided that to you, but for you to not go with it full throttle means it's not like an A-list source.
No. It is an A-list source, but I need a B source too for something like that.
Okay.
I mean, I do have standards. Some people might not think that, but I do. And there's been plenty of crap over the years I haven't run that I knew was true, and I later kicked myself for not doing it when it finally came out. With this one, one of the arguments I saw in response to it was, well, why would they do that? Jefferson's clearly better. You know why they would do it? Because Neighbors signed a contract for the Giants as a 6th overall pick for $29 million for 4 years total. That's why you do it. And that gets back to the broader question, dollar for dollar, is it sensible to give receivers with 3-4 years of experience these gigantic contracts when you can draft a guy and pay him a lot less for 4 years than what you're paying the guy for 1 year?
Well, the part of the reason I didn't bring it up is it just giving up multiple first-round picks for a wide receiver, skipping a quarterback and a defensive player, and then potentially trading Jefferson. It was too much. It's too grandiose. It's too fantasy football-like. It just made no sense.
Well, that doesn't mean the calls weren't made. That doesn't mean the effort wasn't made. The Chargers were talking to somebody about trading out of 5, and there were people in that room that wanted to make the trade. And Harbaugh didn't want to do it. He wanted to stay put for Joe Alt. So I really wanted to nail it down before I did anything with it. And when Walters posted that, and I know that it's weird that it was late in the column, and again, maybe this is one of the reasons why newspapers are going out of business. They have a good story falling into their laps, and they bury it as the 12th item on a 15-item column. That's their business. But I assume they've got standards before they would allow that to be put in print. And so who knows? But I do know this. If it's true, they're never going to admit it now, because it's not going to make it any easier to get a deal done with Justin Jefferson if you start telling the world we thought about drafting his replacement and moving on.
Yeah, with it's cliche, but it's the two sides working to get together on a deal. I've never had reason to believe that it's not going to happen. So, that's...
Other than the fact that it hasn't happened.
Right.
Other than the fact that the ball was on the tee last year and the Vikings refused to get to where they needed to be. Here's the issue. There's two issues. Structure, and I've been talking about structure for 1 year, almost exactly to the day. Structure is a problem because the Vikings don't fully guarantee enough of the deal. They need to come around there, and then it's going to be dollars, and the dollars go up, and they have to accept the fact that delay is never on your side. When you're the team, and if you wait, it's always going to go up. And I think they're going to have to land somewhere between $35 to $38 million a year in new money average on a probably 4-year total deal, 3-year extension on the 1 year remaining, guarantee the first 3 years, or maybe guarantee the first 2 with the third year kicking in after 1 year, because they're not going to cut him after 1 year. So it makes 3 years fully guaranteed as a practical matter. That's what they're going to have to do at this point. Kwesi wrote the check at the scouting combine when he said that Jefferson deserves to be paid like a top non-quarterback. Well, $34 million was the high bar with Nick Bosa, and the salary cap's gone up. I think that sweet spot's 35 to 38, guaranteed the first 3 years. I could broker this thing by lunchtime, cornfield time.
I know you got to
get everybody in the room, and I get this thing worked out by the time we unwrap the sandwiches and eat the pickle. And do you eat the pickle and then the sandwich, or do you eat the sandwich and then the pickle?
Pickle then sandwich, or pickle on sandwich. Now I know you got to go in a minute, but I got to ask you this.
I throw the pickle away.
You wrote at his best, Justin Jefferson is better than Randy Moss. What leads you to that conclusion?
Because he does it all. Moss did a handful of things extremely well. Jefferson runs all the routes. Jefferson does everything. And, Moss, it was that dramatic deep ball, ran past everyone and caught everything that came his way, or take a short pass and just blow past everyone. There wasn't a lot of intermediate stuff in the Moss game. Jefferson just does everything. He does everything. He's like a robot. He's like a cyborg. He does it all. And he's never caused, I've said this on your show before, he's never caused a single problem, and there's value in that. You can trust him to do what needs to be done. And when you pay him, he's not all of a sudden going to become a different guy than he's always been. So I'm holding out hope. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'm holding out hope that by the time they convene for the mandatory minicamp, they'll break through the remaining walls and get something done.
Thanks for the time. Have a good day.
See ya.
Mike Florio, ProFootballTalk.com. Back to the Timberwolves and staying alive and staving elimination after this on KFAN.